We're back with another episode of App Stories. Today's show is brought to you by Memberful. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is our editor-in-chief at Mac Stories, Federico Viticci. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
Doing all right. We are going to do something a little different today. I guess we've probably done this before, but we're just going to talk about two apps that have caught our attention and our imaginations over the last anywhere from a few weeks to months, right? And these are both apps that we've both been using, and we thought we'd go a little deeper than we do sometimes with some apps and talk about why these apps are special.
Yeah, classic App Stories episode. We're just gonna pick two apps and talk about the apps. I mean, it's right there in the name of the show, App Stories. So we're gonna talk about apps.
It is. And the first one I want to talk to you about is one that I had seen it in a few of your screenshots recently, and I asked you about it. And I know people have talked about it on our Club Mac Stories Discord in the past as an app that people like. And it's one that has been on my list forever to try. And I finally sat down and really dug in deep with an app called Anybox, which bills itself as a bookmarking app. But it really is a lot more than that, because it's not just for saving links. You can also save files, images, and notes. And I got to tell you, I really, really like this app. I mean, it's available. It's available on the iPhone, the iPad, and the Mac. And right now, I haven't been using it for too long, really only a little over a week. Right now, I'm using it almost entirely for links, but I have been saving a couple of files in it, which I'll get to in a little bit about how I'm using it. But there's something about the way this app organizes its information that has really clicked with me. Now, I'm still a big fan of apps like GoodLinks, for instance. But one of the things that is always it's not that I don't like it, but it doesn't quite fit with the way I think about the information I save, is the fact that GoodLinks is limited to tagging. And I've never been a big tagger. I like to have things kind of organized. I just like folder structures, basically, hierarchical structures. And what Anybox does is it kind of combines both of these things in a unique way, because it has something called collections, and you can have as many collections as you want. And they're essentially folders for information, whether it's a link, a file, a note, or an image. But an item can belong to multiple collections, just like a tag, like when you're using tagging. And on top of collections, the app has incredibly rich metadata, which comes in handy for a lot of different things. First of all, of course, search with a lot of filters, but also saved searches, another thing that you and I like a lot. And there's an ability to add keywords here too. Keywords and comments, which was interesting to me, because keywords work an awful lot like tags. They're there essentially, and they're very useful for things like files and links, which might not have as much metadata, where you can add some keywords for search purposes later. So maybe we ought to talk a little bit more, I guess, first about how the app's organized. There's the sidebar on all these versions of the app is divided by default into types, which is, things like links and that sort of thing.
Right, and I think it's important to mention that you can use Anybox as a bookmark manager, right? You can save links in Anybox, but you can also save other types of content. So you can save, I believe you can save images, you can save documents, you can save notes, maybe even, although I haven't really tried it. I've been using it mostly as a link manager, as like an alternative to GoodLinks myself.
Yeah, exactly. But what I've been doing is a couple of things. I've got a few things where I send out some checklists to advertisers sometimes. I also have a PDF that I send out to them. And it's really handy to have that stuff stored in a collection alongside links, because someone might say to me sometime, oh, what are these sponsorships on Mac Stories look like? And we have a tag for that. So I can send a link with the tag and say, here, scroll back as far as you'd like. There are hundreds and hundreds of them here. So take a look. So I'll have that link handy alongside the PDF that I want to send them with things like pricing information. And I might have a note with the checklist of items once they decide they want to advertise and the things I need from them. So it can work a little bit like something like Keep It or DevonThink in that sense,
right?
Not nearly as deep and rich of an app as those necessarily. But this really comes back to that thing that you and I have talked about a lot, is that for me, it's the right weight app in that I just need to have the file there. It's handy to have the file and that text there along with the link. I don't need a lot more than that. And when you add on top of that, really powerful search, smart lists, and the ability to organize things in multiple ways, it's really handy.
Yeah.
There's some built-in smart lists here too. There's like a today one where you can see everything you've saved today. There's an inbox. And the thing that I like about the inbox a lot is that if you save something really quickly and you don't give it a collection, for instance, it'll show up in your inbox. And you can then in the inbox later in the day, go back to it and then organize it the way you want. And that's been handy for me because I've got a few different collections. Maybe, give you an example of the kind of collections that I'm using to give you a sense for how the app can be used. I've got a read later one because in addition to being a bookmark manager, very recently the app added read later functionality, which is really well done. I mean, the parsing of the text is fantastic.
Yeah, so it comes with its own. It now comes as of the latest version with its own reader UI. So it downloads links for you, and if the link is an article, it will extract the text and the images from the article, basically removing all the clutter, sort of like Safari Reader does and like Good Links does. And there's a reader UI that you can enter to read articles inside of Anybox, or you can save other types of links. And one of the things I want to mention before we talk about some of your other collection examples, Anybox does a really good job at extracting the metadata from those links.
Right.
It comes with Twitter integration via this service called Knitter, Nitter, Knitter, which I guess it's like a Twitter parser that extracts like images and text and the authors of a tweet. But it can also like find metadata for example, I got a link from Polygon, and it can find the text and the description and the image. It can find the favicon of Polygon.com. It can find the name of the author. Like, it comes with all this metadata you can customize, and it's really nicely done. The description, like, I love having all these fields for all these metadata items.
Yeah, and all of that is editable too. So if you're really picky about your metadata, you can go in and edit it. And a couple of things I would mention about the reader thing. First of all, you can open these links in a built-in browser and use Safari's built-in reader mode. So you can use that. Yeah. But the read it later service is different, and I think it's better. It actually does the parsing and works a lot like something like Instapaper, or Matter for that matter. And so I've been doing, the one thing I would say about the read later aspect of it is that you have to download the articles first, because you're saving the links, not articles. And so you have to first download before you can read. And I would like to assign to certain collections the ability to automatically download.
Yes.
So this,
right? I was hoping you would mention this. Yes.
Yeah, because I have this read later collection, and that's the whole point of it, is to read it later. I don't need those to be links, and I might be offline for some reason. I'd like that collection in particular to always download those articles. All right. So other collections that I'm using are Weekly, which is just links that I'm saving for the Backstories Weekly Interesting Links section. Apps, when I hear about a new app, I drop it in there until I have time to take a look at it. Research, which is a little bit of a catch-all for things I might want to be writing about, or maybe just products that I'm researching for a house or something like that. Sponsorships, which I already kind of described, which is just a place where I'm parking some information that I have to send out to people regularly. And then a sponsor ideas section. When I come across a company I thought might be a good fit with Mac Stories or App Stories, I drop it in there and I can look at it again when and find out more about the company when I have time. So that's what I'm using currently. How about you?
Yeah, I've mostly been experimenting with it as a read later alternative to good links, especially now that it comes with its own reader UI. I've only used it for a few hours. I haven't really moved any of my existing links that I save in Apple Notes or Obsidian to it. What I am really intrigued by is this idea of the collections, and so how you can have a collection and you can save all of your links there, but also, in addition to the collections, I think something that has really caught my attention is the smart list functionality. Yep. I mean, you know, John and me, this show, we're all about tagging and smart lists and metadata and having filters to customize how we can find and enjoy content in our favorite apps. We did an entire episode, I think, a while back about smart lists and smart folders and why we believe more apps should offer this kind of functionality. One of the things that I find really intriguing about Anybox is the ability to have smart lists that filter your collections and the stuff you save based on multiple criteria, including nested conditions. So you can have, for example, and or filters for like, I want to find links in this list or this other list, but also an incredibly powerful feature, a regular expression support. I have these two smart lists, one called video games and the other called Apple, that automatically populate based on two regular expressions that I created to scan the title of articles as well as the description field, so usually like the excerpt of an article, with this regular expression that finds multiple words. For example, in my video game smart list, I have this regex for God of War, Elden Ring, Hollow Knight, Sony, PlayStation, Nintendo, Switch, Xbox, like all these keywords that are typically found in video game articles. And because it's a regular expression, I can, have a parenthesis and be like, okay, if you find any of these words or phrases in an article, that's a video game story. Whereas for the Apple one, it's similar, but it's got words like Apple, iPhone, iPad, Mac, macOS, iPadOS, and so forth. And if you're a power user and you save a ton of links, this becomes a really convenient way to say, I don't want to be bothered with tagging the stories myself. Just find them and organize them for me based on the metadata that is already in there that you know about.
Yeah, there's a lot of date metadata in here too. So you can do things like show me the video game articles that I've saved in the past week, if you want to just see your recents and that kind of thing, which is another nice way to parse the information.
Yeah. The one thing I would love to see added, if the developer is maybe listening to this, I don't know, is a field for filtering by domain. So, for example, if I'm saving articles from Polygon.com, those are all going to be video game stories. And right now, there's no way to have filters based on domains, which I think is actually something that I was able to do back in the day with Reader by Silvio Rizzi. With the shortcuts integration, you can filter by domain. Here, there's no domain filter, and I would love to have this. In addition to keywords, in the title, in the description, the collections, and, all the dates, also the domain, like the source domain would be super useful to have.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. The other thing that's worth mentioning, besides, for me, read later is usually like a read it and then discard it. But built into Anybox is the ability to archive things, and you can archive them as web archive files, PDFs, or screenshots. So if you have something and you've read through it and you've decided that this is something you need for reference material long term, it's easy to save it that way too, which I think is fantastic because not a lot of bookmarking apps have that kind of functionality built in.
Yeah. And another thing that I would mention now that I'm looking at the Mac app, which has a bunch more features than the iPhone and iPad version. One of the features of the Mac app is something that the developer calls the AnyDock, which is basically like a floating dock that it floats above all your windows. You can put anywhere on your Mac, and you can add any of your favorite links to the AnyDoc, and you can invoke it with a keyboard shortcut, and you can navigate it, I think, with the keyboard, and you can easily and quickly reopen any of those links. So basically, it's like, imagine if you have your Safari favorites, but instead of having to manually open Safari, go to the start page and click on a favorite, imagine if those favorites were like on a floating thing anywhere on macOS, and you could get to it just from the keyboard. That's a super clever addition to a link manager, and of course, something that is only possible on macOS, because on iPad, developers cannot do this kind of system-wide UI that floats, even if you're not inside Anybox.
Yeah, some other Mac-only features. There's a menu bar app, which has a bunch of functionality baked into the menu bar. My favorite, I think, Mac-only feature is an auto pasteboard detection pop-up, so that as soon as I copy a URL, I get a little toolbar that says, do you want to open this in a browser? Do you want to save this to Anybox? Do you want to do, there's like 4 or 5 different things I can do with it. And then if I do nothing, it automatically kind of goes away after a few seconds. But it's really handy to get stuff into the app very fast. Another thing is something called the stash box, which is a little bit like a universal clipboard.
I haven't seen this. What's the stash box?
Well, so go up to the menu bar and enter Command B, or you can get to it there. It's just
the stash box. Oh, okay.
See, okay, so now if you copy any text or you copy a file, it'll automatically end up in the stash box, which floats above all your other windows.
Oh,
It's a good way to quickly, grab a bunch of things, whether it's URLs or images or files or text or whatever. They're all in there. And even if you then close it and open it up again later, it'll all still be in there and you can deal with it later. It's just kind of like it's a little bit like Yoink maybe, but it's not really designed for moving things from one place to another like Yoink is. It's more like a universal clipboard where you can stash something and deal with it later.
Yeah, and even though, like we mentioned, how Anybox now comes with its own reader UI, I just wanted to say that it really integrates really well with Safari. Like if you want to keep using Safari as your reader of choice because you have your extensions, because you like Safari Reader, because you want to use shortcuts integrations on a Safari webpage, you totally can. And Anybox serves as this excellent middleman between the links you save and Safari as the browser for those links. And something that you can do on the Mac, for example, there's all these different UIs that Anybox can have. Another one, so we mentioned the AnyDoc, you mentioned the stash box. Another one is the Quick Find panel. And the Quick Find, which I give it like Command Option Control F as a system-wide hotkey. You can trigger that anywhere. You can start typing. It finds links in your library that match that query. You just press enter and the article reopens in Safari right away. And it's so fast and keyboard driven. And it really shows you how Anybox can really shine on macOS because of the limitations that don't exist on the Mac. And so even you can use Anybox's own reader mode, or you can just say, you know what, I want to keep using Safari because I prefer Safari, but I just want to use Anybox to save those links and find those links. And we all know how you can save those links in reading list in Safari, but it's really limited in Safari.
Yeah. And it works well with Firefox and Chrome and Edge too, because it works with those, and it has extensions for those as well. So you can enable the extension and use it right inside those browsers as well. We should talk a little bit, I guess, too, Federico, about automation. I think one place that Anybox is a little light is on the shortcuts integration. It's got some good shortcuts actions. I think it could stand to have some of the predicate filtering added and maybe a little more depth in terms of how those actions are customizable. But that said, it also does have AppleScript on the Mac. It has a URL scheme. Yeah, it has a URL scheme. And there are both PopClip and Raycast extensions. And the Raycast extension is really good. You can do all that kind of searching and opening and saving and all kinds of things right inside Raycast.
Wow, I didn't know about the Raycast extension.
Oh, it's really good. I only scratched the surface. I found it this morning when I was looking at the website, and I've only scratched the surface of it, but it's made by the developer, I think, and it's got a whole bunch of different actions that you can invoke.
Yeah, I did it 1 week ago. Yeah, it's got all these options: search links, show quick save, save the current tab. See, this is another of those things that it's only possible on the Mac. You can save the URL of the current tab to Anybox. But yeah, I think this is an excellent choice if you've been looking for a new way to organize your links. On the iPad, you got a native sidebar. Like, it's broadly speaking, I think Anybox does a really good job at being like a native experience. The same cannot be said for some of these new contenders in the read later space, like Matter and Up Next. They both have their very custom UIs because like those services are meant to be cross-platform. This is a native experience. It's got native context menus in multiple windows, keyboard shortcuts. Like, it's a first-class citizen. But yes, I would love to see the shortcuts integration be added to Anybox, which I should mention before we move on to the next app. I believe, pretty sure, this is made by a single person, and it's very frequently updated. You can download it for free, but there's a subscription, of course, if you want to get Anybox Pro with a bunch more options, which you can try it out pretty easily for like $1.50 a month. You can see if it's for you, and if it's not, you have plenty of other options. Like Keep It is another one that you mentioned, and of course Good Links if you're just interested in the links. I think this is an excellent pick to spend a few days, play around with it, kick the tires of this app, especially on the Mac. It's really well done, and it's nice to see that the developer is iterating on it and at a pretty rapid pace right now.
Yeah, and I think if you want to try it out, it's nice because you can also import and export all of your data in and out of this app very easily as JSON, I think maybe CSV, and some other formats. So you can bring things into it from another app, or you can, if you decide it's not for you, you can get things out again. There's also a one-time payment option if you're not into subscriptions. I think the one-time payment is $38, something like that. But I think it's well priced, and it's a very deep app and worth checking out. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Memberful. Memberful is the easiest way to sell memberships to your audience, used by the biggest creators on the web. Memberful handles all the hard stuff, so you can focus on what you do best while earning revenue quickly. If you're looking to add membership to your existing business, you want a solution that works with your existing technology, so you can launch a new revenue stream without rebuilding your entire tech stack. That's exactly what we did at Mac Stories. When we started Club Mac Stories, which is our subscription business, we went directly to Memberful and have been using them ever since. They integrate with MailChimp and Discord, which we use, as well as WordPress and a whole lot more. Memberful maintains a full-featured GraphQL API, webhooks, and OAuth single sign-on to make it easy to integrate seamlessly with any stack. It also maintains a best-in-class WordPress plugin to add membership and content restriction to your website. And of course, you can use your own custom domain, something that we do with Club Mac Stories, so everything is fully branded under your name, and it connects directly with Stripe, the payment processor for secure payments, and it handles your transactional email too. Memberful has everything you need to start a membership program, including custom branding, gift subscriptions, Apple Pay, free and paid trials, private podcasts, in-house newsletters, referrals, and tons more. Get started today for free with no credit card required. Just go to memberful.com/appstories. Again, that URL to start up your own membership is memberful.com/appstories. Our thanks to Memberful for their support of the show. All right, Federico, we've got to talk. It's maybe a little ironic that we're going to talk about a Twitter client, but I think it's time that we talk about Spring, because this is to me the best third-party Twitter client out there right now.
Yes, it is. It's one of my favorite surprises of 2022 for sure. I talked about this on Connected. I wrote about it more in depth on Mac Stories Weekly. It was a Mac Stories Recommends a few weeks ago. And I figured, let's also talk about it on App Stories. Spring has been around for a while. I think it's been around for a few years at this point. It's a universal Twitter client, third-party Twitter client for iPhone, iPad, and the Mac, and it's a universal purchase. You have a light version on the App Store you can get for free with some limits, and there's the full version that has a subscription. You can decide to unlock it or not. This is a Twitter client for power users, right? It's really what it is. And it's the kind of experience for people who, as we say this, like to use Twitter with a third-party client. Who knows if by the time this episode comes out, that will still be, because things are very much in flux at Twitter at the moment. So hopefully by Sunday, when App Stories Plus subscribers get it, or on Monday for everybody else, hopefully the Twitter API still exists. Hopefully Twitter still exists by Monday. But in any case, this is a third-party client that lets you see your timeline the good old way, of reverse chronological order, no ads, no promoted stuff, classic third-party experience. And in many ways, it's reminiscent of Tweetbot. And the Twitterific, you got some customization in the timeline. Like at a glance, it looks similar. But when you dig deeper into the settings and all the personalization options of Spring, you realize this is an impressive option that is both the most customizable Twitter client on Apple platforms right now, and also the most powerful if you're the kind of person who wants to customize the entirety of their Twitter experience.
Yeah, you really have to spend a lot of time looking at the settings just to get a sense for what you can do, because it's really extensive.
Yeah. So the one thing, obviously, that I want to mention up front is on iPad and the Mac, this is a multi-window compatible app. So you can open multiple windows, and each window can be a different view. So you can have a window for your timeline and a window for your mentions and so forth. There's also the ability to have a secondary column, but this works differently from, say, TweetDeck. In TweetDeck, used to be that you can open multiple columns over and over. Horizontally, you could just spawn a new column for a different view. Here, you have one secondary column that can display a profile or the detailed view of a specific tweet. But otherwise, if you want to have multiple views, you got to open multiple windows, which I think is a bit different from what you may be used to, but also gives you more freedom to make each window as big or as small as you want. And on iPad, it works well with the new Stage Manager system, because you can get all these windows, so you can place them wherever you want, and it's more flexible than just having one window with a bunch of columns.
Yeah, on the Mac, you can do the column thing, though. You can spawn, it's all one window.
As many as you want?
As many as you want. And I've got it open right now with 5 columns, and they're all different saved searches, because that's how...
Oh, nice. Oh, I guess that's one of the new features in version 4 then.
Yeah, I'm using this as kind of a TweetDeck replacement, and I'm using some of the searches, the advanced searches that you built, I don't know, years ago now, that have show me basically mentions and other things for Mac Stories, the Club, and App Stories. That way, for instance, if I publish a story and maybe you tweet about it and someone replies to you and Mac Stories, I'm not going to see it, but with this, I can see it if I want to respond to somebody. So yeah, I'm doing a multi-column view, really just to keep tabs on all the accounts that we manage at Mac Stories.
Nice. Perfect. Well, then, I've been using the Windows instead on the iPad with Stage Manager and the external display, and it works really well. Mm-hmm. Well, as well as Stage Manager can work on the iPad right now. On the iPhone, as of version 4, you have this new feature called a divide view, which is basically in-app split screen mode for Spring on the iPhone. You can split the screen vertically, and you can have a view at the top and another view at the bottom, and you can resize the two views with a very Apple-like divider that you can grab and resize. And it really serves as a proof of concept for split view on iOS, which of course, it can get a bit crowded because you don't have a huge screen, but it's doable. And especially if you have a big phone, and you can see 2 or 3 tweets from the timeline at the top, and maybe keep an eye on your mentions coming in at the bottom of the screen. It's a really neat way to keep an eye on multiple things happening in Spring at the same time. I wouldn't recommend it to use it all the time, but that's the beauty of Spring. You can turn it off and turn it back on whenever you want. Now, obviously, the thing about Spring is the customization, right? And in many ways, it's impossible to talk about the customization of Spring because you can customize everything. I mean, I guess we could talk about it, but it would be a 5-hour episode of App Stories. Yeah. You can customize the colors, the fonts, the size, the layout.
You can save your layout. You can save everything as like themes and then export them and share them with people too.
You can save these configurations as themes and export them and send them to other people. You can back up your settings. But there's a couple of things that I wanna focus on, because like everything is customizable, and my recommendation would be go to the settings and play around with it, have fun. If you are the type of person who listens to App Stories and is into this type of thing, which is, I recognize it's a weird thing, like having all these settings and feeling happy when you see all these settings. Trust me.
If you find it a good way to relax, it's how we relax, right? We sit down and we go through the settings.
Yes, sit down, go through the settings, and feel extremely satisfied for fine-tuning and tweaking something to your liking. There's a couple of things, though, that I want to mention more in depth. One of the key concepts of Spring is that everything can become a section. Everything can become a tab in Spring. A saved search can become a tab. A profile can be pinned as a custom section or custom view. Call it whatever you want. Your Twitter likes, your, a profile, a specific tweet, your direct messages. Like anything you see that you can right-click on or long press, if you see a pin to tab bar option, that means it's something that can be viewed as a standalone permanent section in Spring. So, for example, in my custom tab bar in Spring, I have the saved search that I've been using for a few years to aggregate my mentions and people who quote my tweets in a view. That's a saved search based on an advanced Twitter search. I have my Pokemon list, so you can pin any list as a custom view in Spring, and you can get to it whenever you want. So that's one of the key features to understand here. Anything can become a tab, and not just that, all these custom tabs can have a custom name and a custom icon based on SF symbols. On the iPhone, typically tab bars, at the bottom of the screen, typically you have like 4, 5 tabs. You can have 6 or 7 tabs here.
As many as you want, really.
As many as you want, and the ones that will not fit because it gets too cramped, you can have an overflow menu where all the other tabs go in and you press it, you get a menu, you tap on the tab in the overflow menu. So anything can become a custom tab. Play around with it because it's super fun, especially if you're the kind of person who has multiple saved searches. All of those searches can become tabs. The customization also extends to the menus, right? The UI, the buttons that you see. You can customize all the actions that you see underneath a tweet in Spring. For example, I decided to have reply, retweet, like, bookmark, translate, copy link. This is a small thing, but Spring is one of the few apps that gives you like a direct copy link button. So you can just press it, copy a link to a tweet, go to iMessage and make fun of a tweet with your friends privately. That's a great feature. Speaking of the timeline, an important thing that drove me to Spring in the first place, this is one of the first clients, I think it's actually the only third-party client that tries its best, given the limitations of the API, to replicate the layout of threads from the Twitter app and website. This is something I really like about the official Twitter app and the web app, is that in the timeline, if somebody I follow replies to an older tweet, that older tweet gets resurfaced, so I see the reply with the context of the original tweet. It's the thread view that Twitter rolled out a few years ago. Spring, the developer of Spring, figured out how to do this. And it's really well done because it doesn't make me miss using the official Twitter client. This has always been a sticking point for me when I was testing Twitterrific and Tweetbot and Aviary. They don't have the threaded view in the timeline, and Spring does. But back to the actions. So you can customize the inline actions, but you can also customize the context menu. So you can choose when you long press or on the iPad and the Mac, right click on a tweet, you can choose which actions you want to see in that menu and in which order. I mean, like I said, like this is a customizer's dream come true. What else? I mean, you have your timed mutes. So you can mute somebody for 1 day or 30 days or forever. You have stats. This is one of the few clients that shows you the number of retweets, the number of likes on any tweet, and you can open the list of people who retweeted or liked a tweet.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that you shouldn't do, but if you want to stroke your ego every so often, you can do that.
Go for it.
Go for it. I won't judge. I mean, I do it. And lastly, I think I would mention something I really like, Find in Timeline. This is a pop-up search box that lets you find a tweet that has a particular word or phrase by just typing the phrase, shows you the tweet, but it doesn't lose your spot in the timeline.
This feature is so good.
It's so good. And from that same UI, you can, in addition to finding stuff in the timeline, you can filter your timeline. And filters include stuff like, I don't want to see tweets that have GIFs, or I don't want to see tweets that have polls, or I don't want to see retweets. And if you start thinking about how everything can become a custom view, then you realize how you can do something like, well, what if I want to have a timeline that just shows me tweets with links? And you can do that. You can make a timeline that has just tweets with links.
Right, and that are original tweets, for instance.
And that are original tweets. So, original tweets with links. And it basically turns your timeline into a newsreader. Like, the kind of things you can mix and match and recombine and turn into specific views with Spring is incredible. And it's why I keep talking about this app. And it's also why I'm very sad about how things are going at Twitter. And who knows what's going to happen to Spring. But that's why I guess we wanted to talk about it today. Just in case something happens, let's make sure that we froze this moment in time. And we told people about how good Spring the verb, the tense will depend on what happens over the next few days, I guess.
Yeah, I can't say enough good things about that find in timeline feature, because no other app does that, not the official app, nothing. And it makes it a much better research tool and better way to find things that you remember seeing but aren't sure how to find again. It's really nice.
Yeah. And like I said, we could go on for hours about Spring, but like I don't want to turn this into tutorial. Get the app, play around with the settings, long press everything or right click everything. And if you like this show, it's very likely that you're also going to like this app. And depending on how things go with Twitter, I guess let's hope that the developer considers, I don't know, a Mastodon version of this. Maybe.
But in the meantime, reward this developer for hard work and a great app, because this is an app that everybody who uses Twitter deserves to try out and enjoy. So I don't know. I love it, and I can't say enough good things about it.
Yeah.
All right, Federico, let's call it quits for this week. I want to thank our sponsor again. That's Memberful. You can find me and Federico over at macstories.net. Federico is on Twitter and Instagram, where he's at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.